struggling to take this seriously, guys, because this is our first ever video. So if you're ever looking back 10 years from now, don't judge. It's a bit of a DIY cobbled together. We've started with the MDF panelled wall as a tutorial. We have had loads and loads of people doing this, lots of you interested, and it was one of the biggest tutorials that we were asked for, and we thought the best thing to do was actually do a panelled wall in a new office space that we're taking over. Thank God my dad's the landlord. So I'm going to start quickly with what you'll need. We've started with MDF board, as you can imagine. Spirit level was absolutely critical. Tape measure, sandpaper, we used what's referred to as 120 grit, and the Mirka sandpaper it was. A hammer with some nail pins, like you know the really small pin nails. Some filler, which was just the any purpose filler. A brush, we used a 2-inch favourite size, and a roller. One of which was a foam head and one of which was a fluffy head. I'll come back to that later. And then finally, we used the Hippo Pro 3 glue, which is like a sealer, a filler, a cork, all in one. So step one, as you can imagine, was to measure up. Now, this took us a little bit longer than it probably should, especially considering my dad is quite a maths whiz, but we got there. So this is obviously where you need your tape measure and measure up the walls. So the dimensions of our wall was 300 centimetres wide by 290 centimetres tall. The MDF sheets that we were using were actually only 240 centimetres by 120 centimetres. So we knew from the start that we were going to have to do a little bit of patching work. That being said, we built that into our design of the panelling and made sure that any patching was going to be around the bottom of the wall, which you'll see as we go on with the video, because that's going to be where it's less noticeable and a little bit easier to fill in. So next we had to work out how thick we wanted each of the panels to be, which I'm going to call lats from now on, because they were either the stand-ups or the verticals or the horizontals. My dad was able to chop up an old pallet for me, which I know not everybody's going to have access to that, but we made an 8 centimetre one and a 10 centimetre wide one, just to kind of be able to step back from the wall, see how they were going to look. Decided that we really liked the width of the 10 centimetre one, and that's how we formed the rest of the measurements for how the panelling was going to work. So perhaps now we're at the most important step, because this is likely something you can't do at home. It's working out what you need to be able to go to. We went to a local carpenter. I know some people go to B&Q and have the MDF boards cut to size. What I'm going to do is create a little kind of sketch or template to tell you exactly how we worked it out, in the hope that you can then mesh this with whatever your wall size is and still make some sense of it, rather than try and copy exactly what I've done, because obviously each wall size is different. But to begin with, we have our wall, which was 300 wide by 290 tall, and we now know that we're working with 10 centimetre wide lats. Based on the design of panelling, we knew we wanted the square kind of panelling. We knew we needed to start with a frame around the edge of the piece of wall. Based on each width being 10 centimetres, we knew we needed to take 20 centimetres off the height of the wall and 20 centimetres off the width of the wall, taking the wall size down to 280 by 270. I hope I've still got everybody and you've not all fallen to sleep. That's our starting point. Then it was really important to try and find the centre point of the wall, which for us, based on the 280 centimetres, because we've taken the 2 edge panels off, is 140 centimetres. If the lat is 10 centimetres wide, you need to go 135 centimetres and 145 centimetres for that to be exactly in the middle of the wall. I hope I'm still making sense. So once we knew that, we were visually trying to work out exactly how wide we wanted each of the square panels to be, whether we wanted it to be a smaller size square or a larger one. I think that's a lot of personal choice, but by being able to see the centre point, it was a lot easier to visualise. So now, based on having the centre point, knowing that I wanted 2 further panels on each side of that centre point. It told me I needed 7 uprights across the wall, and if I wanted it to look like a square, I was going to need 7 going down as well. So that does include the 2 edge panels, which were the frame to begin with. The little bit of basic mental maths that I have also told me from the original measurements of 300 by 290, which once we took the 20 centimetres off each to 280 by 270, we were going to be quite close to a 40 by 40 centimetre square for each of those, because it was divisible by 4. Not exact, but very close. So it kind of all started fitting together from there. So we knew we needed 7 uprights and 7 horizontals, and that was going to make our square wall. Therefore, how to work out what we needed. So we knew we needed the base going right across the bottom for the frame, which was going to be 300 centimetres wide, and one for the top, 300 centimetres wide. That's the full width of the wall. If you remember, I mentioned our panelling MDF sheet originally was only 240 by 120, so I knew that we needed to patch 2 pieces together here. We did this wrong, just going to caveat that. It's not the end of the world, we were learning, I'm teaching you the right way, but we didn't actually get to the maths because we just got in our heads so much, we didn't get into the maths of needing the 300 top and bottom. So I'm just being honest there and letting you know, don't worry if it's not perfect. But to go back, we need a base of 300 and a top of 300. So the widest we could get was 240 centimetres. So we were going to need 2 pieces cut to 240 centimetres and then 2 additional at 60 centimetres to make our 300 width. Then we were going to do the 7 uprights going across the wall. So remember, we now have the base and the top 10 centimetres taking out of that original 290 measurement, making those 270 wide. If the MDF panel is 240, we could have 7 of those at 240. We needed an additional 7 at 30 centimetres so that we had the full 290 width once we took all of the additional pieces into consideration. And then finally, we needed 30 based on having 7 uprights across, 7 uprights down. That was 6 grid shapes, which is 30 slats to go across, and the exact width they worked out at is 36.6 centimetres each. And how we worked that out is the width of the wall was 290 centimetres. There was going to be 7 uprights coming from that, so we needed to take 70 centimetres off the 290, which got you down to 220. Divided that by 6 because there's 6 panels inside each of those 7 uprights, and that gives you the 36.6 centimetre width. We didn't need to work it out the other way because the uprights are full. We just needed the horizontal widths because those are the little pieces that we were building up. Now there's the fun bit of sticking up the frame. This was actually so easy. We used the Hippo Pro 3-in-1 adhesive, which is a sealant adhesive filler all in one. Literally just a thin bead of this down the back of the piece of wood, and that was it. That was all that was needed. On the larger pieces, so the full width pieces from the wall, we did use the little pin nails. Probably there's a technical term for those, but they're really skinny nails, just to hold the larger pieces of wood in place. We were going to pull those back out, but because they didn't have any heads, it's just going to be easier to hammer them back in rather than having to fill the holes. So we just ran a thin bead of the glue along the back of the pieces of MDF, popped it up onto the wall. We started with the base piece and then worked our way around the frame. As I say, we pinned those in to hold the larger pieces of wood in place, and we got the spirit level out and made sure that we were making them level. Now, our wall, we discovered, was the wonkiest of walls. It was absolutely atrocious. So we did a few little bits and pieces of filler to make it work, just to try and hide the fact that it wasn't a straight wall. We've still tried to keep the paneling as straight as possible rather than follow the wall. That was easy for us to hide because the ceilings are tall. You're just going to have to make a call on that at your place. But we were good 3 centimetres out at one end of the wall to the other. Hence why we've tried to keep it straight. Literally as simple as pop the glue in place, get your spirit level out, make sure it's level, and then move on to the next piece. Okay, so some of the smaller details, we decided to what's called chamfer the edge of our MDF, and I'll show you a little close-up picture, but it's quite a nice angled edge finishing just to neaten off the sheets of MDF. That was something our carpenter was able to do for us. If not, don't worry about it. A lot of people smooth off the edge with caulk. We didn't need to because of the chamfering edge. Now we ran over the whole wall with a tack cloth. These are folded up little cloths that basically help to remove any dust, and as you unfold them, it's effectively like getting a fresh piece of cloth to remove more and more dust. Went over the whole wall with that first, and then we dampened down the MDF, so just a sponge and some water just to open the pores in the wood and help the adhesion of the acrylic primer undercoat we were going to use. We went for 2 coats of the acrylic primer undercoat. You get best results on MDF with 2 thinner coats than trying to apply a really heavy thick coat. That's because MDF is an incredibly smooth surface, so if you go quite heavy handed with your paint and end up with lots of runs and that kind of stuff, it's going to be really, really noticeable. So yes, it's a little bit more time consuming, but for a nicer finish, 2 coats was the best in this situation. So we started off with the acrylic primer undercoat. We used a foam roller where possible on the lats and a 2-inch brush to cut in around the edges. We didn't bother painting the bare wall. It's not MDF, it's not a full MDF sheet on the wall, it is plastered wall. So we didn't need to primer that piece. That was just emulsion on there. We only needed to apply the primer to the actual MDF pieces. 4-hour dry time before a recoat, and then we popped the second coat on. Don't think you need to see that in a lot of detail, but basically it was nicely coated, nice and white, and then we moved on to applying our paint. We went for the hardware and acrylic eggshell. It's an office space, and the hardware and acrylic eggshell is a scrubbable finish. Also, a lot of people ask me what the sheen level's like on acrylic eggshell. People hear eggshell and they think it's going to be really shiny. It's only an 8 to 10% sheen level, and we thought doing it on the wall would be the best way to show you guys. So hopefully that's been helpful. First coat of paint, as you can see, it covers so well. It's really, really nice thick paint to work with as well. Once again, we cut in with a brush, and then we used a fluffy roller to paint onto the walls. A fluffy roller is used for emulsions, and a foam roller is used for more of your woodwork paints, such as your acrylic primer undercoats, your glosses and your satins. We did the panels in strips so as not to let the paint get too dry. We didn't want to do all of the cutting in across the wall and then all of the infilling across the wall. It's best to not work too far ahead of yourself. If you manage to let parts dry and then carry on, you can sometimes see that that's noticeable in your work. So try and keep to smaller areas and work in that way. Again, gave it 4 hours to dry, came back and did a second coat, and that's it finished. And it looks absolutely fantastic. Hope you agree. If you liked it, give us a like below. Subscribe to our channel because there's going to be lots more coming. Drop some feedback in the comments below. We're going to pop down there a guide, the link to the blog, and the little notes that I promised, and also links to any products that we used. We've created a bit of a bundle so that you don't have to individually shop for all the pieces, hoping that that's useful. But as always, let us know, give us a shout, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Woohoo!